Andrew Tulloch from Trade Investment Queensland. I just want to focus on this opportunity of the middle class in Asia that the Treasurer mentioned with his slide with the circle and more population in that circle than outside it. And a question for Bruce Gosford of Austrade. Obviously, free trade agreements are a key element of the approach here, and there's some really good news with the China, Korea, Japan agreements. I was just wondering what you see as coming beyond that, the opportunities in India and Indonesia, etc., or where do you see the other opportunities to capture this middle class opportunity in Asia?
Yeah, it'll come on.
Thanks very much, Andrew. This is a big cohort of people we're talking about, of course. A lot of people talk about it moving in a straight line, and it's not necessarily the case it will. And of course, we're not talking about middle class often in the way that we might think of middle class people. I mean, some people think of middle class in parts of the world here as people with, say, more than $10,000. But they have some discretionary ability to put different food on their table or think more about their children's education or travel a little bit. There's enormous things happening, but you can't get carried away with the sort of too much with just the size of the trends. It's about finding the right product in a very competitive environment and being able to deliver something and get paid for it in the right way. And often it's that last bit that's the hardest bit, of course. There are significant things happening in India, now looking at sort of 6 or 7% growth. And if Prime Minister Modi is successful, maybe that even has some upside potential. But great opportunities there, particularly around skilling people, around aspects of food and agriculture, around parts of services, and we saw that during the big mission that Andrew Robb led in January, where, for instance, in sitting down with the Minister for Railway and India Rail, the largest employer in India, it was quite interesting to just run through the sorts of issues they were thinking about and how they needed to manage the modernisation of the Indian rail sector, and then to hear from the counterpart Australian companies running the longest heavy haul freight system in the world, running the biggest urban transport network in the world, and the sort of skills that they had to offer India. So India is a big opportunity. It's going to be there whether or not we've got an FTA, but an FTA can do a significant amount to improve that. And of course, Indonesia, a very substantial economy. It's got a consuming class now that people talk about as 45 million, growing to 135 million over the next couple of decades. A big market already for consumables. A lot happening there in parts of infrastructure that are of quite some interest to Australia. So again, we can't just assume that because these big trends are happening that there's an easy place for us, or that we know precisely the place that will deliver the right sort of commercial outcome that suits the demand and the capability we've got. So that's why I think it's so important that we do work. The business sector, the business associations, the state governments like yourself, Andrew, and the Commonwealth to make sure that we're identifying the market opportunity, and more particularly doing our role in connecting people in markets where government has a particular role in opening a door to allow the sorts of conversations that might lead to some commercial outcome flourish.
Thank you. I have one final question. Thank you.
Brad Pragnell from the Australian Payments Clearing Association. A question for Rebecca. You identified the need for industries to be strategic and collaborative, and your example of the food industry is an excellent one. How do we promote strategic and collaborative approaches within industries where they often see competitiveness in domestic terms? They raise issues around wanting to do innovation in a proprietary sense, competition law barriers, business cases, all that sort of stuff. How do we overcome those barriers, and how do we promote greater industry collaboration within industries?
Thank you. It's an excellent question. I think that the best way to do that is to role model and to show rather than preach. Because I think the companies that demonstrate an ability to collaborate and to look out rather than in, and by out I mean out of Australia into the global environment, I think very quickly come to a view and an insight that there are problems that are bigger for us to face than one company alone can solve. And I think also, certainly in my experience, you know, the data bears out. The reality is the companies that show us strength, whether it's SMEs or MNEs, of collaborating and harnessing the global supply chain, create greater shareholder value and earnings growth over time. And specific to SME, which is always a really important topic within the context of Australia because it's just such an important part of our economy, the research is very clear globally. The SMEs that are nimble, tech savvy, innovation strong and play well with others succeed. And so if they can find a way of either partnering and clustering together to have access, harnessing a supply chain that's pre-existing, or partnering with MNEs who often have the capital and the risk appetite to invest over the long term, then invariably they succeed more. And my contention is Australia's like an SME nation amidst a global environment of scaled economies. So I think we just need to exhibit a lot of those same characteristics.
Thank you. As I said, trying to keep the time a little bit behind now, I'm going to draw this session to a close.